Welcome to Series 2 of Leadership 101, a video teaching series designed to help busy youth and children's ministry leaders invest in their leadership development. We hope that these teachings are going to help you develop your gifts, sharpen your skills, and flourish as a leader. So are you ready? Let's go. I've had an idea that I reckon is going to make me a fortune around youth and children's ministry conferences. A new line of t-shirts emblazoned with the logo. Administration is not my gift. Come on now, show me the money. I'm joking, of course, but the point is that if you haven't said it yourself, you've definitely heard it or something like it said by your colleagues in youth and children's ministry. And you know what? It's kind of hard to argue because none of us got into youth or children's ministry because we wanted to complete risk assessments or collate consent forms or manage accounts or fill in registers. These things are just, the necessary evils that accompany the real work of reaching, discipling, and investing in the lives of children and young people. And yet, I'm really concerned that there is a leadership essential that we are overlooking and thus significantly lacking in because we've incorrectly labeled it administration. What I'm talking about is execution. Now, execution and administration are not the same thing. Execution is the difference between having ideas and making ideas happen. It's the difference between dreaming big dreams and living those dreams. Execution is the difference between envisioning change and actually changing things. Now, not every leader requires the gift of administration, but every leader who wants to be an effective leader must learn the discipline of execution. Ryan Holiday says that our ego wants our ideas and the fact that we desire to do something about them to be enough. But friends, they're not enough. Not nearly enough. In fact, the scripture even goes as far to say, it is a sin to know what you ought to do and then not to do it. See, everyone can have ideas. Most of us desire to do something about them. But the thing that marks out great leaders from the rest is the ability to make those ideas happen. So come on, let's be wary of spending so much time talking about ideas that we convince ourselves we've actually done something about them. Instead, here are 6 steps that you can implement to help take your biggest dreams out of your head and into reality. Number 1, begin with the end in mind. So the other day, I jumped into my car, I popped on my seatbelt, I put the key in the ignition, and I pulled out of my parking space and set off on a journey. But when I got to the end of my road, I began to panic. Why? Because there was a junction and I didn't know which road to choose. Except that didn't happen. And it's never happened to anyone. Why? Because no one sets out on a journey in their car without a destination in mind. And the fact that they have a predetermined destination ensures that when they come to a junction like that, their decision is already made for them because their destination determines their direction. And yet, this kind of scenario does play out regularly in our ministries because we didn't set out on our leadership journeys with an end in mind. And this means that when we're confronted with a decision, panic sets in because we don't know which way to turn, which choice to make. So in order to effectively execute on ideas then, we need to know where we're going before we set out. And thus, the first step of execution is to have a clearly defined vision. R Covey, he says it like this: to begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you better understand where you are right now so that the steps you take are always in the right direction. So what are you aiming for? What's your target? What is your predetermined destination? Begin with the end in mind. Next up, put most important things first. How do you order your days, I wonder? Do you get the hardest things out of the way first? Maybe you warm up gently by getting the easiest things done first? Or perhaps you jump into the most urgent things first? Well, unfortunately, none of these methods will help you to effectively execute on your ideas. If you wish to arrive at the destination you're aiming for, you must prioritize the things that enable you to get there by giving them the first and the best of your time. So don't be tempted to jump straight into your email first thing in the morning. Set aside that time to work on the things that are most important according to your goals, which is not the same thing as the most urgent according to your email inbox. We do the most important things first. Thirdly, say no to say yes. Once you do have a clear idea of what you're aiming for, you have in turn made an advanced decision about how you'll spend your time, the things that you'll say yes to and the things that you'll say no to. See, your activity should be determined by vision, which is your predetermined destination, not by demand or even by opportunity. But in order to effectively execute on ideas, you'll need to say no to a whole bunch of good things in order to protect that time that is required to deliver on the most important things. So Doug Fields, he explains it like this. You need to learn to say no to many good things and wonderful people so you'll have space to say yes to God, yes to the important people in your life, yes to priorities, and yes to what matters most. So, don't be afraid to say no even to good opportunities in order to say yes to God opportunities. Number 4, what, who, and when. Until your ideas are rooted in clearly defined action, those ideas will never become a reality. So don't move on from that idea until you've clearly defined what needs to be done next, who is going to do it, and crucially, when it needs to get done by. And this is even more important when you're working alone because there's nobody out there keeping you accountable to a deadline. So I want to encourage you, create self-imposed deadlines for yourself and commit to delivering on them. Next up, strategic time for strategic thinking. You know, the number one enemy to making ideas happen is everyday life. Now, precisely because new ideas are new, they don't have to be done. And for that reason, they're the first things to be forgotten about when life begins to get busy. And this is why you need to carve out some time in your calendar each week to stop and think ahead. Have a pause moment with your phone off and your inbox shut down to consider what needs to be done in the coming week in order to execute on your ideas. And finally, block timing. Now, having considered what needs to get done in order to make ideas happen, don't put it on a to-do list. Now, perhaps this sounds counterintuitive, but I believe that there is a better way. Instead of transferring the steps you need to take to execute your ideas onto a to-do list, block out some time in your calendar or diary to work on it. That way, when somebody asks you for some of your time and you open up your calendar to book it in, the time you need to make your ideas happen doesn't get swallowed up by the next most urgent demand. This is how to plan, prioritize, and protect the time that you need to execute on your dreams. Now, I appreciate that none of this is particularly exciting, but here's the thing, dreams don't work if you don't. And when we forego the leadership skill of execution under the guise of, well, administration's not my gift, we're actually making excuses for our inability to deliver on our ideas. So let's cut this phrase and phrases like it out of our language, because we can make excuses or we can make a difference, but we can't make both. Finally, let me say thank you for everything that you are doing to invest in the lives of children and young people. I cannot think of anything more important that you could give your life to than passing on the gospel to the next generation. So leader, keep going. Do not give up, because what you are doing is important.